Necromancers are getting a brand new skill in Diablo 4 Season 6, the Vessel of Hatred, and today we're going to break down exactly what that new skill is, and I have a little bonus for you guys. We're going to be breaking down a new build for Diablo 4 Season 6, the Vessel of Hatred, using this new skill, which I think is going to absolutely dominate. So with that, let's jump right into the video and break down this new skill. Alright, the new skill we have is called Soul Rift. Now let's just break this down. It is a darkness skill, which I was so excited to see because darkness skills are my favorite skills and builds to use on the Necromancer, and it is an ultimate ability or an ultimate skill. Now this I think is going to be absolutely huge. I think this is going to absolutely enable some darkness builds, specifically the Sever darkness build that I've created, to absolutely destroy in Diablo 4 Season 6. So let's break this down. We have a cooldown of 50 seconds with a lucky hit chance of 20%. So for 8 seconds, you corrupt surrounding enemies, dealing a % of damage. Obviously, this is going to say 0 for now, per second. So this is a damage per second skill, so keep that in mind. And once every 0.25 seconds, so 4 times a second, you absorb 3 souls from 3 enemies. Or sorry, you absorb 1 soul up to 3 enemies, gaining 2 essence and a barrier for 2% of your maximum life. Now the essence and the barrier are nice, but they're not really our main focus. We have a darkness damage over time skill, something to keep in mind of. And you absorb 3 souls at a time from a boss, meaning this skill is fully active when you're fighting a boss. Now why is this going to be really, really good? Well, this gives us another chance to buff our shadow damage over time, which is a huge way to play into the Sever build I've created. Now, with this, we got a new unique, the Unmaker. So as we can see here is an ancestral unique helmet, and this is going to absolutely enable Soul Rift to do some amazing, amazing things. Soul Rift's duration is increased by 0.5 seconds for every 30 essence you spend while it's active, up to 8 seconds. So basically you pop Soul Rift, and then you just keep doing your thing. You keep spending essence, and Soul Rift is going to last longer. So in our case, we'll just keep using Sever. Now, Soul Rift deals 200%, if you get a perfect roll, of its shadow damage per second to surrounding enemies for every 30 essence you gain. So let's think about this. So we're going to be dealing crazy amounts of shadow damage per second every time we gain essence. Well, how do we gain essence? This needs to stay basically active longer. So the way we do this is absolutely just an amazing combination. So we're buffing this to go longer, and by making this go longer, this will pop more often. And with this build, we have crazy amounts of increased shadow damage over time, and this build's absolutely just going to destroy. So with that, let's jump right into the second part of this video, breaking down the build. All right, here we are talking about the build, and of course, we are using Max Roll's Diablo 4 planner. Now, this planner will be linked down in the description below, so you can check it out for yourself. I just want to give a quick shout out to Max Roll. I'm not sponsored with them or affiliated with them anyway. I do just like their planner. They seem to update stuff much faster than all the other planners. And all of my Season 6 planners will be using the Max Roll Diablo 4 planner. All right, let's break this down in the skill tree. Now, we are going to be using Hemorrhage just to get basically to our second core skill, where, of course, we're going to be buffing into Sever, and it's going to be making vulnerable and damaging enemies along its path. Now, we are going to pick up just a few passives here. So we have Hewed Flesh. So basically, we have a chance to create a corpse. And then we're going to be speccing into Imperfectly Balanced through our gear. Obviously, if you don't have that gear, you won't be having it, but just basically, they cost a little bit more, but deal more damage. Now, the next main skill that we're going to be buffing into is Corpse Explosion, and we're going to be turning that into a darkness skill that deals shadow damage over time. And with the build we have, this is actually going to be casting completely on its own. We don't have to cast this ourselves. Actually, 2 of the skills on the bar, we don't have to cast at all. So we do pick up a couple passives here, just basically increase damage after consuming a corpse, and then of course consuming a corpse generates essence. We're going to need lots of essence. So as we move down here, we are going to spec into Decrepify with our 10% chance to be stunned. This is just going to give us a little bit of bonus damage with that stun, and of course making sure they are cursed. So we do pick up a couple passives here. We have close enemies take more damage and they deal less damage. And then we have movement speed because Necromancers are by far the slowest class in the game. Now, next we have another big skill, Corpse Tendrils, where we spec it out into Vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, this is the second skill. We don't have to cast at all. This build is going to cast it completely for ourselves. It's going to be grouping enemies up, making sure they are vulnerable, and allowing us to do extra critical strike damage to them. Now, we do pick up a bunch of passives here, and they are all shadow passives. We actually just went through and selected all 3 of 3 for everything. So as you see here, we spec into Reaper's Pursuit for movement speed, Gloom for more shadow damage over time. We have Terror for even more shadow damage, and Crippling Darkness as well. Now we do pick up Necrotic Carapace just for a little bit of survivability, so we're going to be basically fortifying for our max life when we create corpses, which we're going to be doing quite often here. Now here is the star of the show, and that is Soul Rift. As you can see here, we spec it out fully 5 out of 5 and make sure that we have Prime, making sure that they are vulnerable. Now here we spend the rest of our skill points grabbing a few different passives. As you can see, we don't use any summons, so we can use the sacrifice summon ones. So basically we gain damage reduction, and we basically increase the bonuses from our sacrifices from our summons. And then we do 15% increased damage after casting our ultimate skill. And the goal is to be casting this as often as possible, so this is going to be up for a lot of time. Now this is what makes the build Shadow Blight. Shadow damage infects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds, and every 8th time they receive shadow damage from you or your minions, in this case it'll be you since we don't have minions, while they are affected with Shadow Blight, they take an additional 44% increased shadow damage. And here's the big one. Shadow Blight's damage is increased by 100% of your shadow damage over time bonus. And with this gear, we have a current bonus of 800% multiplicative bonus. It's just absolutely going to completely destroy everything. It's because everything in this build relies on shadow damage over time, and it's just going to stack and stack and stack and explode into do massive, and I mean absolutely insane amounts of shadow damage over time. Now we do have the Paragon fully spec'd out. You can come and see this. We're not going to go through this today. You can see kind of what boards we're using, everything we go through there. You can go through that on your own. And the big thing is the equipment. Now this equipment is kind of a mix. This is without using any Uber Uniques. We're not going to have Uber Uniques for a decent bit until Season 6, till you have to actually get there and farm them. And especially with the changes to Torment 1 through 4, it's going to be hard to get those Uber Uniques, especially, you know, in the early games in Torment 1. So I wanted to do this without that. Now this build does use a few Ancestral Uniques, and you can do these without Ancestral Uniques, and I plan to release a second video for a leveling version of this. This is the end game version. So let's break this down. So of course we have the Unmaker, the new unique helmet. This is really the only unique in the entire build that is absolutely required. Soul Rift is still really good without this, but this is just what makes Soul Rift incredibly, and I mean incredibly strong. Then as we go down to the chest piece, it's just something, you know, a very common legendary chest piece just to give us a little bit of armor. And we go down to the gloves, and we have gain 25% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils. And this is just basically buffing our Corpse Tendrils. We're going to be doing a ton of critical strike damage. Now next we have Flicker Step, and you might be wondering, why are we using Flicker Step on this build? And you don't have to. You can just throw on, you know, a normal legendary boot and be absolutely fine. But why are we using it? Ultimate damage. 300% ultimate damage is really the main reason we're doing this. And each time you evade through, reduces your active ultimate cooldown by 4 seconds up to 10 seconds. So we're basically just trying to get our ultimate Soul Rift back as fast as we can. And this is one of the best ways to do this. And it just increases our movement speed with being Necromancer, the slowest class. Flicker Step is really, really nice, and I would highly, highly recommend it. Now, let's take a look at the weapon here. We went for a 2-handed legendary axe. Now, why is that? It has the implicit of damage over time increased. That is why we went with the axe. And we spec it for intelligence, damage over time, resource cost reduction, and chance for several projectiles to cast twice, and then even more shadow damage over time. Damaging enemies with Sever has a 70% chance to spawn a pool of blight under the target that deals 280% bonus damage. Now, what is a pool of blight? A pool of blight is a pool of shadow damage that is shadow damage over time. So we're going to be getting even more, and it's just a crazy amount of shadow damage over time. We should be able to absolutely destroy everything with this build. So we go down here to our leggings. We just have a thing to just basically give us some damage reductions. You and your minions gain 30% damage reduction. We don't have minions, it's just us at this point. Now let's break down, I wouldn't start with our ring here, but we do have the Ring of Sacrilegious Soul. This one is very nice, but honestly not required. What this does is it allows us to cast Corpse Explosion and Corpse Tendrils automatically, meaning we don't have to press these buttons anymore. It will just do it for us. It is super nice, in my opinion, very, you know, ease of use, especially if you're a player that is newer to Diablo. This is really going to help you. I like one-button builds, and this is what really enables Necromancer to be that character for one-button builds. I really like it. Then, of course, we're going to use on our other ring, Sever no longer returns and instead splits into 3 specters that expand out and back from its apex, and then Sever deals an additional 120% of its normal damage. This is basically just giving us more Severs to go out there and just do absolutely crazy amounts of damage, summon more blights, increase our shadow damage over time even more, and just do absolutely insane stuff here. And of course, we are using another amulet here, a legendary, and each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadow Blight's damage within 10 seconds by 75% multiplicatively, stacking up to 5 times. So how does this build all work? You're going to be doing crazy damage just with your shadow damage over time with Sever, Blight, and Soul Rift, but how are we going to absolutely nuke Torment 4? And it is Shadow Blight, because every time we're using Shadow Blight, we're buffing our damage over time, and we're stacking it higher and higher and higher until eventually our Shadow Blight is going to explode and do billions of damage and just kill everything that's in that pack. And thanks to Corpse Tendrils, everything's going to be together. It's going to explode. It's going to kill everything. We're just going to have constant Shadow Blight explosions killing everything everywhere we go. It's going to be insanely strong. So that is the overall main plan of the build. Now, I do want you to keep in mind this build should work pretty much no matter what they do in the patch notes, but there is a chance they could nerf this build pretty heavily. I don't think it'll matter, in all honesty. I think this build is strong enough that it's not going to matter if they nerf it, but this is just going off some stuff we knew from the PTR. This could get nerfed. This probably is going to be still one of the top builds no matter what they do, but just keep in mind, build for this at your own risk. There is going to be a leveling version of this coming out closer to the launch. I'm going to wait on any leveling builds until we actually see the patch notes. An endgame build like this, I think, is less likely to get affected by those patch notes. So I'm going ahead and I'm okay with releasing this now before the patch notes come out. But we will be waiting for the leveling builds until after the patch notes so you know what to start with and what to do. So with that, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you guys in a future video. There's going to be a lot of builds coming out on this channel, and everything you need to know will be right here. So thank you. Hope to see you guys in a future video, and peace out.